Hey y'all, my name's Aaron Carey. I'm a staff engineer on the editor extensions team, and today I'm going to be showing, just going a little bit about my background into automation and AI. For folks who don't know me, my background is mostly in the cybersecurity space. As a software engineer, I started my career in 2012 doing exploit research as an intern. So during my internship with exploit research, I learned a lot around automation, configuring machines to be vulnerable or not vulnerable to different with based on different security configurations to see if they're vulnerable to particular attacks, testing out attacks, and then testing out remediations and testing out scanning software for vulnerability management to see if folks were exposed to threats. So that's a little bit of, sort of around my background. In terms of AI and what it can break for you, since I've been in the industry for like 10 and a half or 11 years now at least, with software engineering, there's been like a few waves of just different like cultural things in terms of how we did different practices. There was a big drive to move towards test-driven development at one stage. Then after that, it was behavior-driven development. And with these different movements, including like things like configuration management and automating software in different ways, what that ends up moving towards is just different. We just break the different workflows and patterns that we had, and we move to using something new. So AI is not necessarily going to replace our jobs, but it can help us replace some of the old ways of doing things. That can include things like just different tasks and stuff in jobs, where there's different like sort of low priority but high urgency tasks where you have to have this task done because it's going to give customer results or you're going to give results to internal stakeholders. Those types of tasks, AI can be used for as a tool. And this is something historically there are different manual workflows that may have addressed this, whereas AI gives a very easy way for anybody to pick up and start playing around and writing different prompts to just poke and prod at a knowledge base essentially, which can give you something that's not a fully defined golden standard answer, but what it will give you is it will give you just a very rough draft of what you're sort of working towards. So with that, the history is essentially if we look at um, the different tasks, those tasks once upon a time, there was a big movement towards configuration management. And so folks before would have had not vulnerable machines, but virtual machines. And so whenever virtual machines sort of rose, you'd have VMware Fusion or you'd have VirtualBox on your desktop. And you would, as a developer, you would create virtual machines that were up to a standard or your use golden image. And golden image is the term for to say that it's got all the patches or whatever updates you need. You've defined it with all the sort of bare minimum software you need to do your job. And with those golden images, you're able to then iterate on that and use that golden image or sort of like basic resource in basic computer to do additional tasks that you need. So that in 2015, there's like a huge push to using configuration management. And so that was using like Ruby scripts or Python scripts to configure different Linux or Windows machines potentially. And once you've done that, you were then able to look at other frameworks for workflows. CI/CD is obviously near and dear to a lot of us at GitLab, where we can do continuous integration and continuous deployments. And inside of those workflows, you can use those golden images. And so nowadays, instead of using virtual machines, we use containers. And containers is just a different way that's slightly more efficient for like spinning the system up, but for all intents and purposes for most users, it's just a way to virtualize software and virtualize the different applications you need to be running to get your job done. And so within that, containerization makes it a lot easier to take those manual workflows and move to having automated workflows. That drills into chat ops then, which is another sort of like one of the like movements since I've been in the industry, and sort of around like between 2017 and 2019 it became real popular to use Flowdoc or Slack or whatever chat application you had to hook into an API of your continuous integration tool potentially, or whether that was a tool
As
like
many of you know,
Hey, Jacqueline, you all good? Do you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're Gucci. All good, all good. Don't worry. So yeah, so that's how we break. That's how we go from having those sort of manual workflows to automated workflows. And chat ops is just one of the waves where folks started moving to doing chat, where you would chat against a bot, and that bot is literally you're sending a request to the chat API. So if you're in Slack, you'd send a message to you would tag a bot user, and when you tag that bot user, the server you were talking to. So if it's Slack's API, their API would say, "Hey, this the Aaron tagged at Duo. At Duo is resolved to this service, the GitLab like duo.gitlab.com." And then it would then send a message to duo.gitlab.com with information saying, "Hey, this is definitely a valid like signed in user. Aaron is the user who asked for this request," and they would forward that message to that service. What that gets us to then is just chat ops is essentially using Slack or whatever other chat service you're using to trigger user-defined workflows. And so that wave brought in where folks were very used to using bots to message, right? So a PTO by deal would be a good example, and time off by deal, whatever they're going by these days, where for booking time off, we would drop a message to the bot, and that would then trigger an API call, and it would then talk to all the necessary systems, whether that was a workday, whether that was time off. It would go in and send a message to it saying, "Hey, Aaron wants to book the like next Wednesday off." It would then have that payload, and then it would know what to do with that. And that was a manual script going through. It's a system where a developer wrote specific code to say, "Hey, if this, then that," which ironically is a name of a company which specifically deals on workflows and automations. So that is sort of chat ops. I said in the intro that I would be like tying this to how you can use AI to break things. Myself, because I'm from a security background, I always think like in my career, I also want to be an APT throughout my career. For those who don't know, an APT, it's an advanced persistent threat. I want to make sure I'm on the ball, that I'm trying to like level up the best I can in my ability and like be a beast at what I'm doing. So that is advanced. The threat is not basic. It's taking advantage of all the different areas, right, of the system. It's not only focusing on like one simple configuration or something. It's taking into account all the intelligence it's gathered. Persistent. The threat is continuing to take attempt to make an attack, right? So, and then threat in the classical sense is a foreign state or an intelligent hacker, a, a disgruntled employee or something in security terms, where that's the APT. So you have a threat of something that in theory, or it could be a theoretical one or a real one, which is like an where you have like a bad actor potentially or an actor coming in trying to take advantage of these vulnerabilities in the system. And for me, I sort of break that into my head where, okay, that's a test framework and we have a kill chain or a cybersecurity kill chain where these are the steps that you need to accomplish the goals, right? So as I was on the red teams and stuff like that and doing exploit research, I was always looking into how can I do my reconnaissance? Like what research do I need to know against my target? Okay, after I've done some research on my target, I can see that my target has a vulnerability. After I've figured out that vulnerability, I can see, okay, how can I weaponize that? They've got a vulnerability in their HTTP configuration. Okay, I need to talk over the HTTP protocol. Once you know that, you can then figure out your delivery mechanism. So after you know your delivery, you can then do the exploitation. So you take advantage of exploits, you create a Trojan or something like that, or you create a callback attack where once they execute your payload, it's going to achieve some type of objective, or it's going to install your malware, or it's going to it's going to get down what you need for it to do. And once it's been installed, you gain command and control. So you're able to control the system, your system's in place. You've been able to pivot into that system and then you're able to achieve whatever your actions are on your objectives. So whatever your objective was, in the case of attacking, attackers love to steal money from people, right? There's a lot of financial motivated attacks. A lot of them are leaking internal data or memos and stuff like that to damage someone's reputation. But all that relates to security and typically, right? But in my head, the cybersecurity kill chain also motivates me for how can I find out information on something and tackle it as the thing I want to attack. So in my day-to-day work, when I'm looking at using automation, I look at it saying, okay, what is my objective? Let me do some research into the different models and frameworks that are available in AI potentially. And then how can I actually weaponize this AI, creating my prompt and stuff like that, right? Creating a good prompt to actually go ahead and deliver to the model provider. And then at that stage, I can then pivot from that and get that going with having some type of installation mechanism and then having command and control where I'm providing that API to users, where users are then able to go in and use my prompt template and then put in whatever user instruction they have that's specific to them or their use case. And then we get actions and objectives where we're basically getting customer results out to folks. Um, that's pretty much all I had prepared, just giving like a breakdown of some of the years how we had different technologies and the rise and fall of some of them. I did want to talk a little bit about like natural language processing in terms of chat ops. There's a big wave in like 20 I want to say 2017 where there's like all these folks providing like these APIs for NLP, and that essentially just natural language processing. That's moved into like large language models now. But at the time, that was very much providing APIs that let you bind like very specific user instructions. So there'd be like you'd give it an example of like 10 sentences. And when you define that API, like say it was you were writing an API, like the application you wanted to provide, you would use your application, say you want to make deliveries or Just Eat or like Uber Eats, right? You'd create an application and you would connect to their API. And what you do is instead of having specific buttons for things, you would let it be like a chat app. And then you would give it examples of strings that the user may mean to intend some type of instruction. So if you talk to the application and through going through that API, you could say, hey, I want something to eat in the next 40 minutes, right? And you give it that, and the user hit send. Whenever the API would receive that saying that string, it would then take that string and compare it against the examples you give it. So it knows, okay, 40 minutes, that's talking about time. What are my temporal based instructions? And so it would know, okay, out of that, I can see that the user probably just wants to filter what available restaurants there are based on the time. And so then that NLP API would essentially call to functions that you defined. So you'd give it functions to call based on the intent. And then you would give like a helper function, like a default function that it would fall back to say, hey, I'm not sure really what you meant. Here's some examples, right? And so if you use Duo Chat right now, you can see that happens, right? If you use Duo Chat and it fails to understand what you're talking about, it will link you to documentation or it'll link you to like, hey, try this other thing. And so NLP was very much like give it like very specific instructions of what scripts to run, and then you would give it the scripts to run, and it would do specific things. Whereas AI is non-deterministic. So we try our best with the prompts to try to get a very like standardized answer where you get like a few permutations. But AI, the difference with AI is it has this large set of like language that it knows about, and so AI sort of hallucinates what intent might be. And so if you give it really good instructions, like if you're giving a kid really good instructions to like go buy something of themselves at the grocery store, they're gonna do their best job, but they might buy you like the wrong item, or they might buy you like a Diet Coke instead of a Coke or something, depending on the instructions you give, right? If you give it very detailed instructions, it's going to be a lot closer to the end results you want. Um, so yeah, I'm happy to have a discussion after that, but that's essentially the
Yeah.
link that in my head between security, some automation stuff I was working on, and then getting into AI these days.
Okay, I'll come down in a bit, Naya. Okay. Thanks.
All right, y'all. Well, I don't see any questions in the doc, so we can hit stop. And a great thanks y'all for showing up, and I'll post the recording later.
Thank you.
All right, peace, y'all.